Senator from Anderson, Senator Cash is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I come to the well today to explain why I and a number of others can no longer support this effort to move the date of our congressional elections to August while also redrawing congressional maps. I come as one who has cast at least 5 votes since last Wednesday to move H 5683 forward. But I can no longer support the passage of this bill for one simple reason. South Carolina citizens are going to the polls today. And neither my conscience nor my common sense will allow me to stop an election that is already underway. For me, the practical deadline for passing this bill was yesterday, Memorial Day. But because of the rules that we operate under, the earliest we could pass this bill would be tomorrow, or perhaps even Thursday, 2 or 3 days into the voting process. Also, there are 139 amendments on the desk. And if we were to amend this bill in any way, even to correct a mistake, the House would then have to reconvene and vote again, pushing the passage of the bill even farther out. The deadline has passed. Voting has begun. It is time to conclude the matter. Now, I know there is going to be a lot of anger and frustration that we did not get the job done. I get it. Many of us are also frustrated and disappointed at what is a very unsatisfying outcome. But we need to face it. The time clock for getting this done ran out when the time clock for in-person voting started at 8:30 this morning. As of noon today, over 26,000 votes have already been cast, which is over twice as many votes as were cast in the entire first day of early voting in 2024. I realize there are many who, in good faith, believe that we should forge ahead and pass this bill anyway and let the courts determine whether it is legitimate to change an election date and redraw maps even after voting has begun. Obviously, I disagree. But one thing I think we can agree on is that we are at a pivotal point in this process. Fellow South Carolinians, the men and women in this chamber take our responsibilities seriously. We are acutely aware of both the importance and urgency of this matter and the strong feelings that exist on both sides of this redistricting debate. I am on the Judiciary Committee, and last Wednesday we listened to 6 hours of public testimony. So for the sake of those who are engaged in this issue, for the sake of those who want further understanding and clarity, I want to give a brief review of how we got to this point. On April 29th, the Supreme Court of the United States handed down the Calais decision, which prohibits racially based gerrymandering. This was the catalyst for the effort to redraw South Carolina congressional maps. About a week later, on May 7th, H 5683 was filed in the South Carolina House to postpone congressional elections and redraw the maps. About a week after that, on May 13th, H 5683 passed the House Judiciary Committee. This was now 2 weeks after the Calais decision. The next day, Thursday, May 14th, was the last day of our regular legislative session. When the legislature adjourned at 5 p.m., Governor McMaster immediately called us back into extraordinary session. The House debated the bill and eventually got second reading on May 19th and then third reading on Wednesday, May 20th, and sent the bill to the Senate. On that very same day, the full Senate Judiciary Committee met at 2 p.m. and took public testimony well into the evening. It should be noted the Senate moved expeditiously, bypassing completely the normal subcommittee process and going straight to full committee. It should also be noted, however, that the Judiciary Committee heard from every single person who showed up to testify on H. 5683. In fact, the chairman of Judiciary, the senator from Hawaii, held the sign up for testimony open until 5 p.m. to ensure that everyone who wanted to be heard was heard. Judiciary passed the bill Wednesday night, and the Senate convened at noon on Thursday, May 21st, to take up the bill. Now, this was the point at which the Senate rules dictated the pace at which the bill could proceed. Because H. 5683 is a redistricting bill, Senate Rule number 15 required it to be under debate for 2 days before a motion to cloture debate could be made, effectively making Saturday the earliest possible day to vote on the bill and get what is called second reading. The only way to get around Rule 15 was to vote by a two-thirds majority to suspend the rule. On Thursday, the same day the full Senate got the bill, the senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms, gave notice of his intention to make a motion to suspend Rule 15. That would allow the bill to move forward a day faster. In that regard, please understand that Senate Rule 43 requires a one-day notice before the motion to suspend Rule 15 can be made. So on Friday, May 22nd, the senator from Berkeley made the motion to suspend Rule 15 and speed the process up. This motion was made on 2 separate occasions, but it required a two-thirds majority, and we were 5 votes short of suspending the rule. So on Saturday, May 23rd, after the bill had been under debate for 2 days, a cloture motion was passed to bring debate to a close, and then the bill received a favorable second reading. Absent the suspension of Rule 15, that was the fastest that the Senate could obtain a second reading. The Senate then adjourned to meet on Tuesday while allowing perfunctory session to continue on Sunday and Monday and counting those as statewide legislative days. And you might wonder, why did we do that? Because once again, Rule 15 required that the bill be under debate for 2 more days before a motion to cloture debate could take place in the third reading process. The cloture motion is the motion we will shortly be voting on. If the motion is successful, then following cloture, each of the 46 senators is allowed a total of 1 hour each to speak on any amendments. Furthermore, all amendments must be disposed before a final third reading vote can take place. Because of the time all of that will take, a conservative estimate is sometime on Wednesday before the speaking and voting can be completed, at which point we will be completing the second day of early voting, when tens and tens of thousands of votes have been cast with our constituents going to the polls. So in summary, without the necessary votes to suspend the rules, the fastest that the Senate could pass H. 5683, which it received 1 week ago on May 20th, would be Wednesday, May 27th. That's the fastest it could be done. I understand the anger and frustration that we could not pass a redistricting bill any faster, but the rule of law is a bedrock principle of our constitutional republic, and I will emphasize it is also a bedrock principle of conservatism. Now, someone might say, y'all should have done redistricting back in January, and then we wouldn't be in this mess. Again, I get it. But as I said earlier, the catalyst for this current bill was the Supreme Court decision handed down on April 29th. I understand the Senate is going to get blamed for this failure, but the calendar and the rules would not allow a bill that was received on the floor on Thursday, May 21st, to be passed any faster than tomorrow, Wednesday, May 27th. Which brings us to the pivotal moment of whether you believe it is wise, whether you believe it is right, of whether you can, in good conscience and by common sense reasoning, pass a bill that changes the election date and redraws the maps when voting is already underway. We're in the South. So I want to digress for a moment and talk about a football game to illustrate my point. Imagine, if you will, two powerhouse football teams that have a scheduled game, and yet one team has decided that they want to reschedule the game to a different date and play a different school. And so the school administration tries to make that happen in a compressed time period with game day drawing near. Meanwhile, word of a possible game change gets out. Fans are wondering what's going on. But also, in the meantime, all the routine preparations are taking place, which involve a lot of people and a lot of work. Now, everyone knows that if the game is called off, even the day before the game, people will adjust accordingly, although not without a lot of wasted time and effort. But can anyone imagine the administration finally making the deal to reschedule the game date and the opponent after the fans are in their seats, after the game has already started? Would that make sense to anyone? Is that reasonable? Is there any precedent for handling a football game that way once it has begun? Yesterday was Memorial Day, a solemn day of remembering the ultimate sacrifice made by some so that all enjoy the blessings of liberty. It is a fitting time at which to have this debate, to ponder the choice that is before us, because we know by long experience that a free and fair election is not some insignificant event that we should take for granted. It is an essential element in the fabric of our constitutional republic. We'll close by saying this. I have looked and I have had staff do some research. As far as I can tell, there is no historical precedent for a legislature to change the date of an election and redraw the maps once the voting has begun. No precedent. Not in the history of South Carolina, not in any state. Many of us, myself included, do not want to be a party to creating such a precedent. Thank you, Mr. President. I will be voting no to cloture.